serves me correct, of course, we're talking about blood, part of the cardiovascular system, and, well, the circulatory system. And let me think. We were talking about how iron is going to be on that hemoglobin molecule. Iron is going to be able to have this really, good affinity for oxygen, therefore transporting oxygen throughout the body to the areas of the body that are going to need the oxygen. So we left off talking about iron and how it's important and how we get it in our diet. Then a couple of other vitamins that are going to help with Okay, so now that my train of thought has been completely broken, can someone remind me where I was?
You're just going to remind us about the additional minerals and vitamins that are.
All right, so we mentioned how we get iron in our diet, and then these extra supplements that are important. We sort of left off at the B12, folic acid, where we mentioned, for example, folic acid is something that they tell women who are thinking about getting pregnant or who are pregnant, to make sure they get a proper amount. B12 is important because it will help with erythropoiesis, all right, that formation of the blood. However, B12 is one of those vitamins that we do tend to deplete when we're under stress, whether it's good stress or bad stress. So the B vitamins, B6 and B12 both, tend to be a little bit low in our bodies. Sometimes, you hear people have to get a B12 shot, that sort of thing. Now, vitamin C and copper, these are going to be cofactors, and therefore enzymes. Not sure if you remember when we talked about enzymes, but the structure of an enzyme is very specific, and then there are things that can help that enzyme function correctly. So in an enzyme, I don't even know why I look here. In an enzyme, if that enzyme has a particular shape, it'll only accept materials that will fit into this shape. Now, if you remember, enzymes need some help with their functioning, so they may actually have an area that might be over here that could come in and accept what was termed a coenzyme, all right? And then a lot of our minerals, the metals, they function as a cofactor. Meaning, if I had copper all right? And that attached to the enzyme, it could actually make this enzyme function better. So if we're going to have enzymes, and enzymes, if you remember, their product is a protein. Hemoglobin is that quaternary protein structure, okay? So if they're synthesizing hemoglobin, these coenzymes, for example, vitamin C, okay, and then a cofactor, copper, okay, are going to help this protein function more efficiently, therefore giving a better production of hemoglobin. And how many days does that red blood cell have to make hemoglobin?
Four.
Roughly about 3 to 4 days. So it needs to be as efficient as possible for making hemoglobin. Does that make sense? Okay, so some more dietary factors that are really good for helping. A lot of which, however, we don't get enough in our diet. So we usually end up taking supplements such as vitamins and that sort of thing. Now, one of the things that happens, the red blood cells, they have a particular lifespan. Do you happen to remember what the lifespan is?
120 days.
Roughly 120 days. During that 120 days, well now, we get rid of how many per day? It was billions, right? Okay, and we produce how many per day? Millions, okay? I mean, I just can't remember the numbers right off the top of my head. But see, here's the kicker. That 120-day lifespan of that red blood cell, it goes through a lot. Because a red blood cell circuit around the body, your blood's going to you're going to see that one blood cell make a circuit about every minute. So if you take every minute of every day for 120 days, that's how many times that red blood cell has got to circulate. Now, in that circulation, it has to make its way through a capillary bed, because it's in the capillary bed where an artery is going to meet a vein, where we're going to see the flow of blood begin its return to the heart. Meaning at that point, it's no longer dropping anything off. Okay? Once it begins the venous ascent, all right, it's not dropping anything off. But it has to be squeezed through those capillary beds. So the red blood cell, by the time it reaches the end of its lifespan, it's gone through a lot. It has, started to fall apart, not quite as efficient, that sort of thing. So the homeostasis for our red blood cells, it's based upon negative feedback. Because negative feedback is what helps control homeostasis in the body, okay, for the most part. So if we determine, or if the body picks up on a drop in that red blood cell count, that's going to cause hypoxemia. Because hypo means not enough, okay? So we end up with this lack of oxygen being detected by the kidneys. When that happens, if you remember, the kidneys release that particular hormone called erythropoietin, and that makes its way to the bone marrow, and that's going to stimulate the bone marrow's production of red blood cells. It can take about 3 to 4, maybe a little longer, depending on what the case might be, to increase red blood cell production. So if there's been a huge loss of blood, for example, if there's been a huge loss of blood, the body, if it stopped, the body can recover from that huge loss. However, it takes a while. Therefore, sometimes when there's been a huge loss of blood, people are given blood. Okay? Now, some reasons that we might have to stimulate erythropoiesis, because this is the process that's going to stimulate it. We could have the low levels of oxygen. We could be at a high altitude. Why?
Less oxygen?
There's less oxygen in the atmosphere. So if we go to Mile High City, let's all hop on a plane and go to Denver, okay? Go to Mile High City, all right? And if you go there, first time for us, because hey, we're down here at sea level, all right? So by the time we get there, we get off the plane, we might have some trouble, okay? So we get there, we might have some trouble actually getting enough air, we might get winded, might get dizzy, okay? But if we drink plenty of water and let ourselves have a day or two to acclimate, okay, usually we're going to be okay. Any of you ever experienced altitude sickness? Yeah, I didn't believe in it until I experienced it. Went up to Vail and Breckenridge. Oh yeah, got sick. I mean, wow. I believe in it now. I say?
And so it takes 3 to 4 days for a major loss of blood, right?
Well, anything that's gonna signal to those kidneys that there's not enough oxygen circulating in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as those kidneys pick up on that, they are going to start the production. They're going to get that erythropoietin. It's going to go to the bone marrow, and we're going to start that red blood cell production. Mm-hmm. So a major loss of blood, when we say a major loss of blood, let's say like there's been a car wreck, mm-hmm. and you've lost, quite a bit. What'll happen is you'll be given blood because the body still needs it, and it's not going to be able to recover the amount lost. Now, in a situation of like if we go to Mile High City, we haven't done anything to lose blood. However, you're going to have that little bit that gets, because you're in the air there that's thinner, okay? Thinner. So what will happen is the body will pick up that it's not enough oxygen, and it'll start producing red blood cells. So let's say you're there for a week, okay? So starting from day 1 until the day you get back on the plane and come back home, your body has been receiving information to produce more red blood cells. So you come back home after day 7, you come back home to Virginia at sea level, and you're going to have a gazillion extra red blood cells, and you're going to be full of energy coming back to Virginia until the body goes, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I don't really need all of this. And it'll destroy the cells without more production.
Would you adapt better to like that high altitude if you drove in versus flying in?
Probably.
Okay.
But I drove in.
Oh.
And I still got
Okay.
altitude sickness.
Okay.
Yeah. Does this sound familiar? Increasing red blood cell production in your blood? Why does it sound familiar?
Because we just talked about all that with the hormones.
No. Does it sound familiar in another way? There's another term for this.
You mean like a cut? Or
Associated with athletics.
Building up muscle?
Blood doping.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of that?
No, it's not.
Okay.